They're messy and you're neat. They're a saver and you're a spender. They're a free spirit and you like to run things on schedule. You're a homebody, but your partner always wants to be out with people. The idea that opposites attract has been around for centuries, but is it true? And whether it's true or not, how the hell can you find a way to happily coexist with someone when there are so many places you don't align? Today, I'm answering all those questions and teaching you my 3-step process for getting out of the feeling of being opposites and back to those feelings of attraction. So stay tuned. Welcome back to the podcast. Hello. You know who I am. I don't know why I introduced myself at the beginnings of these, because you know I'm Dr. Abby Medcalf. It's so good to be here with you. Thank you for the latest reviews that just came out. Oh my gosh. I read them all. Somebody with like spaghetti in their name. I don't know. There was a lot of cool ones. Thank you all. I love reading them. Obviously, when you leave a good review, I love reading them. Really appreciate the love. It is your way to show love for me. I try to give you quite a bit in every episode. Whenever I do an episode, I think to myself, would I pay money for this? And if the answer is yes, then I do it. If it's not, I don't. That's literally how I figure it out. So hopefully you feel the same, and it helps me a lot. If you're watching me on YouTube, subscribe, hit the like, do all the things. You can see me. What am I wearing today? My nice little white sweater. Okay. So let's get to it. This is something actually that someone wrote to me about recently, and I threw it to the head of the queue because I thought it was such a good one. I thought, wow, in 5 seasons, I don't think I've ever been asked this question, or this is our 5th season, and I've never talked about it before. So I thought it'd be kind of cool to chat about. So this whole opposites attract thing, and how do you deal when your partner's different? And we're going to get there, my 3-step process. So before we start, I want to be clear about a few things first to make sure you're in the right place if you're listening right now. First, I am going to talk about opposites in romantic relationships today, but I will tell you that these tips would work absolutely in all other types of relationships also. So if you're not in a partnership right now and you listen, which I know a lot of you do, which I love, you even listen to the ones that are about romance if you're not in a relationship. Love it, because this is how you get in a great relationship. And again, all of my stuff, even when I'm just talking about romance, really does apply in all relationships. It's just sometimes hard to try to be so broad about everything. And sometimes like today, I kind of go in, specifically. So that's 1. 2, I'm not talking today about, you might consider this an opposites attract thing. I don't. This is a situation where your partner's abusive in some way. If the opposite thing you're talking about is that you're a people pleaser and very timid and never put up a boundary, and your partner is dominating and critical, that's not an opposites attract thing. That's a different kind of thing. So that's a different episode you should be listening to. I mean, this might be helpful today, but I've got a lot of stuff on the podcast about that. So on the website about that. So you can go check, how to deal with whatever, and put in your term in the search bar and find a lot of information. Number 3, I'm also assuming you're already fully committed to this person and aren't deciding if this opposites thing is a deal breaker. If you're deciding whether or not you want to actually, get married or stay with this person, I would highly suggest I have an episode called The 10 Questions to Ask Before Getting Married or Moving In. You can listen to that. Or is this relationship worth saving is another really popular one. You can listen to those. I, of course, as always, will link them in the show notes if you don't know, but just do a search with my name. You'll find it. It's with the titles. You can just search for it on Google. It'll take you all the places. Okay. So one of the things that gets asked when this situation does come up is, people will say to me, well, why didn't I ask about this first? Like, how come we never talked about this? How come it was never discussed? People think that things change a lot once you're in the relationship after a couple years, that people change a lot. And I will tell you, that's actually, people change a little. Certainly after kids, we change, maybe big life events. But in general, believe it or not, people have already been showing you who they are. So I know. So think about, you're deep in a relationship with this person you feel is opposite of you in some way, right? You're either married, you have kids together, maybe you've just been together for the last 20 years, and you're not planning on going no matter what. I do want to say that too. So okay, so you're sitting in this relationship with all these, these differences, or one huge difference that you can't get past. And you're wondering again, like, how did I get here? How did I not notice this earlier? And the answer is you did notice it earlier on some level, but you ignored the warning signs. And yeah, you don't like I'm not going to lie to you ever. I love you too much to sugarcoat things or talk bullshit to you, and I'm not going to do it. So if I'm saying this right now and you're like, no, Abby, no, they were completely no, then check yourself. Just listen. What do I always say? Listen like you're wrong. Be open to what I am saying, because I'm telling you there were things, and you might not be able to recall them because of chemistry, and I'll tell you why. So you might not have noticed them. Your brain noticed somewhere, but it kind of tucked it away, because in the beginning of a relationship, we've got that physical attraction or some other type of really strong chemistry going on that literally hijacks our brain. We end up, overlooking or missing a lot of very valuable information that's presented in the beginning of a relationship. Your partner isn't, suddenly messy or suddenly different with money. It's not it. You're just noticing it now, because those early lust effects have worn off. It takes about 2 to 3 years, longer if you've been in a long distance relationship, for those initial wonderful chemicals to dwindle. And that early period is when a lot of couples decide to get married or move in or have babies and do all that stuff. I don't know. So it seems like people changed after marriage or after a baby, but really they've been this way all along to some degree. So yes, things can get more intense, more different. I certainly changed after kids, I'm sure, but not in some really fundamental ways, not in my, my values and things exactly. I mean, they shifted some, and when I say that, I mean, like, you can have ideas about religion, let's say. And this happened to my sister. My sister married someone who wasn't Jewish, and she was fine with that in the beginning, and she didn't care. And then once she had kids, all of a sudden she became very Jewish. My sister became super Jewish after kids and wanted to take them to temple and do all these things. She happened to have married a guy who was fine with it, who really went all in on it. He never converted technically, but he was amazing. He was like out there building the Sukkot every year and like, sukkah every year on Sukkot. And he was incredible. Anyway, in those ways, he just jumped on board, and that was kind of lucky, right? Because that could have been something that obviously destroyed the marriage in a lot of ways. So, I mean, there's those kinds of things that can happen, but in general, people are people. And certainly the stuff we're going to talk more about today. So by the time what happened, and I wrote about, I'll link to previous episodes I did on this about the brain chemistry and lust and love and attachment and all that. I'll link to all those. Most of the research is Helen Fisher, who, if you've been listening to me for any length of time, I have quite the girl crush on her. I love her. Love you, Helen, if you're listening. Her TED Talks are amazing. Anyway, she's incredible. So, but by the time these opposite things really become an issue, what happens is that we've often been with the person for a while, and then I see people getting very stuck in unhealthy thinking, like, well, I've already invested all this time. I don't want to start over with someone else, or, it'll change after we have kids or things like that. I hear that stuff a lot. Or we're just really this upset because we're planning a wedding, and I'm like, I've been doing this almost 40 years, people. I've seen a lot. I've heard, I'm not saying you can't be the exception, but I am saying I wouldn't bet on being an exception. I don't think that's a smart way to go. And so, we just get all in and we think, I can't back out now. I can't undo this now. Or we don't want to get divorced, or we don't want to be seen a certain way. It's too close to the wedding, or it's too, we already had the baby, or, whatever. And you're just like, oh, well. And I will say, you can work on it though. You can work on this. So that's what we're going to talk about today. So do not lose hope. But I just want to point out there why you might have missed it in the beginning. So then, of course, it's like, well, do opposites really attract? Is that true? And I will tell you that the short answer is yes and no. It depends on what exactly you're talking about. So on the yes side, it seems that, yeah, you can be attracted to your partner, your opposite at first, because it's exciting and it's new and it's different. There's so much to learn. There's so much novelty, and our brains love novelty, especially in love. So your physical chemistry, for that is there. Also, obviously, your just regular physical chemistry, like I said, might be off the charts. So you've got that lust brain, which results in those differences seeming fun or not something to be bothered by. And in those first couple of years, those differences, they usually stay kind of intriguing because they haven't become obstacles yet, right? You haven't done enough where they're big obstacles. Maybe you haven't merged your money yet or bought a house or, really talked about children, depending on how old you are when you're listening to this, right? If you're in your 50s getting together, you're going to have very different issues. And the opposites attract thing can be very different than when you're younger. And I will tell you that there's things, it's hard, even when, these 10 questions to ask before you get married that I give, you don't always know. Things happen. People, change, have life events. I've had clients who've had, near, death experiences actually, come back, heart attacks, hearts ripped in two, that kind of stuff. I mean, crazy crap. And they come back and their personalities have changed, or they're just thinking like, oh, why was I saved? I need the, and suddenly things really shift. That does happen, and you can't plan for everything by asking every question. So I want to say that too. So it's also true that if you have two people who are too similar in the wrong ways, I've seen that. I've had couples where like they're both alphas and they have a very hard time making decisions together. So being too alike is hard in certain ways. It's like there's just no, room to move. And so finding someone who's more opposite of your personality in the beginning, I think can feel fun or more tranquil, or like you get along better. I think we're also looking for someone with these opposite qualities because they're things we want to improve in ourselves, right? So we like being around that energy. I think that happens too. So I'm thinking, of course, I think I've shared this wonderful couple. Hopefully you're listening. I have this wonderful couple I worked with years ago who she's from Brazil and he is from Germany. Don't you laugh just saying that right now in your heads? Yeah, I know. Yeah, these are real deal. Love them both so much. Oh my God, such amazing people, both of them. Smart, bright, incredible, just amazing in the world. But you can imagine they were really their stereotypes so much. You can imagine this Brazilian woman with the joie de vivre and time doesn't really matter, and, doing things in her own way and having all that, big personality, just like you'd imagine this wonderful, incredible, oh my God, bon vivants, like, incredible. And he was also amazing, but in his own way, right? Super duper smart, really educated, trains running on time though. He was very German in a lot of ways. And you can see, I could see why they fell in love. They're so different and they really complement each other so well in so many ways. But when you're just trying to like plan a vacation or figure out what school your kids are going to, or where you're going to live, or how much money you're going to save for retirement, the things that happen when you're together a long time, you can see how this can get in the way. They're doing great, by the way, as far as I know. No, and I know they are because I get a Christmas card every year, which I love. Anyway, you know what I mean? So that's the thing. That's the thing to keep in mind. Okay, so that's like on the yes side of opposites attract. On the no side, really, this is where a lot of the research is that no, opposites don't attract. That's not what we do. A lot of the research shows that partners without similarities don't, they just don't stay together or stay happily together for very long. And if your partner, is super ambitious and all about attaining goals, but you like to live like a free spirit and goals feel stifling, you're obviously going to have some trouble, right? Building a life together and making plans. So, and there was a lot of research I read. There was one large-scale study that I thought was interesting. They analyzed the digital footprints that people left on Facebook, because they track everything, regarding things people liked and what they posted about. And they absolutely, I think the name of the research article was even Birds of a Feather Flock Together or something. They did. Most people interacted with people with interests similar to their own, right? That's kind of how that, but that's digital. So I was really looking for something bigger, and I did find, and I found a bunch again, but what I'll link to in the show notes, I'm not going to leave 50 articles in the show notes. So there was a large, it was what we call a meta study. And it's when you're analyzing and combining results of a lot of studies, and this had over 240 studies in it. And the researchers found that similar people who were similar in their partnerships scored the highest in longevity and how long they were together and their overall satisfaction. So now, but here's the deal, and here's what you need to hear. Those similarities that they found in the research and all these studies, and I saw this in other studies too, weren't about that each of you has to like jazz or everybody has to love to hike. Instead, these couples were similar when it came to values, attitudes, and personality traits. So if you have someone who's super optimistic with someone who's super pessimistic, that can really have trouble over the long term, right? In some ways, again, now if they're not super on either way and they just sort of lean a little each way, it's a wonderful complement to each other. But when you have people who are at other ends of the spectrum, it becomes really difficult. If your value is that family is more important than anything else, no matter what, and someone else's value is that work is more important, then, right? You can see how you get into trouble. So having the values aligned, so a place that you can come back to when there's conflict, these values that bond us, that make us feel close to our partners, that's what's really important. So, and you can have different backgrounds, obviously. You can come from money or not come from money, or even though most people have similar backgrounds, but or be someone who's black and someone who's white, together. You can have different religions, like I've had in my relationships. You can have those things, but if your values align, you can have a very satisfying relationship. Okay, so there's the long and short of that. Do opposites attract? Do they not? Yes and no. so there you have it. But so let's get to what to do, because this is where I want to spend most of my time today. And I have these 3 steps to opposites attracting, you know what I mean? To creating a lot of attraction there, as opposed to this other feeling. And step 1 is you got to change your mindset. And I do this work with couples all the time, where you can imagine, right? How many couples come to me because someone's more messy or someone wants something else in the marriage or whatever. I mean, everything. That's really what people argue about, right? Their differences, where you don't align. So, excuse me, changing your mindset. I'm going to sip water. Hold on. Oh, that's better. Changing your mindset is first. And the first thing I'd like you to do is stop saying that your partner is the opposite of you in some way. Right there, okay? Just stop using that language. Immediately, when you say that they're opposite, you are unconsciously, or maybe even consciously, you're going to assign negative attributes to your partner, which sets you up on opposite sides and stops you from connecting. What always needs to come first is the deep, abiding belief that you and your partner are on the same team. I did a TED Talk about it. I've talked about it, I don't know how much on the podcast. Keeping score stops you from connecting, being on opposite sides, not being happy for your partner when they have a win. In any of these ways, you can think about it, right? When you label and do this with your partner, you're setting yourself up on opposite teams, which means, you don't treat them as your like you're on the same team. You treat them opposite, right? You need to treat them as your respected teammate. That's what you have to do, not someone who you need to dominate or score points on or prove something to, or, be higher than or whatever in some way. So you need to think of your partner as being complementary, not the opposite of you. I've already said that a few times. The complement. We're not opposites. We're complement. We complement one another. Okay. That's what you say. Well, my partner compliments me in these ways. Okay. Not opposites attract. Language is important. And when you start using that language, I'm telling you, your brain starts to set it up. And so does your partner. So it's really time. I want this mindset shift is about you starting to respect and embrace your differences. Stop railing against the machine. You don't love your partner despite the fact that he's messier than you, or despite the fact that she doesn't see the value in saving money. That's not it. You love this person with all the many facets they bring to the table. I always say with Gary, I don't want him to love me despite certain things. I want him to love me because of these things. These are all what makes up me. And I've shared before on the podcast, I have a lot of energy. I have a lot of optimism. So I say yes too much for sure. I work on it, but it's still a struggle. And so, if I'm going to someone's house for dinner, I'm going to, for a potluck, I'm that person at the potluck bringing like a dessert and a salad and two mains and something to drink. And I'm bringing too much, and it's not too much to me. It's something that gives me joy. So obviously for Gary, sometimes it means that I'm asking him to help, or I'm asking him, oh, could you grab this? Or I have to, I'm cooking, so I need him to do something else around the house. And way back, we used to get into it a little. He's like, you have to stop saying yes so much to things. You're impacting me, and it's not fair. Like, you're expecting me to come home early from like softball so that we can, you know what I mean? Like this fun thing I'm doing so I can help you with something. And I had to take a look at that. And I also told him, of course he likes it at other times when I'm so energetic and say yes. And, when he's asking for sex, I always say yes. Hello. So, I'm always about the yes. So you can't just like it where you like it. You can't cherry pick. So as I'm talking to you, you have a partner, you have a person that you really love a lot of the aspects of this part of their personality. Maybe the fact that they're such a planner, and when it comes time for vacation, they are amazing and they plan all the things and they go through it, and you love that. But then other times it feels like they're micro-controlling your life and you don't like it. You know what I mean? You don't get to cherry pick. You got to figure out a way to love all of them all the time. I know. It doesn't mean you always like it, but it means you love them and you're not fighting it so hard. And it's really about accepting the people we love for all that they bring. So, and really think about ways that it's helped you. Maybe the fact that your partner is messier helped you let go of some of your perfectionism, or maybe the way your partner spends money more easily has helped you see that it's not all or nothing, that you don't have to be so afraid when it comes to money. I don't know what your thing is, but there's always a learning that we have with our partners, and it's really important to open up to that. And this relates to it, because I would also like you to change your mindset about the right and wrong of it all. It's not right to be someone who likes saving and wrong to be someone who spends money more freely. It's not right to want more sex with your partner and wrong to want less sex with your partner. It's not right to put away the dishes at night before you go to sleep and wrong to put them away in the morning. I know, I see you. You're like, are you in my house, Abby? I'm not, but I see you. I know, this is what you think. Again, when we think of our partners as wrong, we see them in a negative light. Well, and we also set up that tug of war over that issue. What you like are your preferences, nothing more. They are not facts. They are not evidence of anything. They are your opinions. They are your preferences, and you are allowed to have them. God bless your little puppic. God knows I got a lot of opinions. We all know that. A lot of preferences, but they're mine, and I understand that part. What you think of are facts. Again, they're just what you prefer. So you can't make your partner wrong for being different. There's not a one right way to be with certain things. There's just not. And that, I don't know, for me, that was the biggest aha I've ever had probably in my life. Was that I would be so sure about something. It was just my preference for it. So, because also, what we like has a lot to do with kind of our personal threshold, and we all have different thresholds for things. My personal threshold for mess is relatively low, or things being like dirty. I don't do great with it. Gary has a very high threshold. Not for mess. He's not a big messy guy, but things could be like dirtier. There could be mold in the shower. He's fine. He'll shower around it. Like, he doesn't care. He needs to clean. He's clean with himself and he's clean in his world. But his car, I don't even want to talk about his car. He doesn't clean it. Like, it just things he doesn't care that much about. He thinks it's fine. He'll wipe it down every now and then. He's not getting in the corners and getting out the, whatever antibacterial wipes. Like, he just doesn't worry that much about those kinds of things. Whereas when things are dirtier, I get, it's just gross. Like, I don't like to be around it. I don't like to be around it. So these are different thresholds. So, maybe you have a lower threshold for a messy kitchen. So you feel like you're always the one cleaning the kitchen, but it's really because probably your partner has a higher threshold for a messy kitchen. He's more comfortable with it being messier than you. So to them, like, you might think every time you walk in the kitchen, there's crumbs on the counter, or there's a little bit of jam left over from one of your kids or something somewhere. And you're always wiping those counters, right? I don't know. Is that a mom thing? I see husbands wiping counters, God for you, or men wiping counters, but I a lot of moms, we like to wipe our counters. I didn't wipe my counter this much before I had kids. I don't know what it is, but, but maybe your partner would just wipe them down at night. Doesn't see the big reason, like, that some jam can't be on the counter or some, I don't know, some crumbs around, like, doesn't really care. And then maybe every night before you go to bed, you do it once. But the problem is then you have been wiping it all day long. And so in your head, you've been wiping their crumbs off the counter all day and building resentment that you're wiping their crumbs. But that wiping, I need to say this with so much love in my heart, you're wiping the counter for you, not them. And that's how you have to see that. Oh, I know I said it. I say it with so much love in my heart. I know this is hard to hear. And I'm not talking about men not doing, I'm not getting into all the men don't do as much work as women. We know they don't. I'm not getting into that men shouldn't do more work around the house. This is not what I'm talking about, because this could go either way. You could be a man that wipes the counters and your partner doesn't care about the crumbs. I'm not talking about that part right now. I'm talking about our own needs for preferences for wanting things a certain way. Your house will be okay with jam on the counter. It really will. And you're like, no, we'll get ants. We'll get that. Okay, so maybe you get ants. Okay, maybe you wipe it. But there's a lot of stuff you can have around. It's true. That doesn't really matter so much. It's just how you like it. You like to walk in. It's kind of sparkling and it looks clean and nice. Or when, for me, when I'm going to make dinner, I can't make dinner in a mess. Some people can. I've watched people do it. I've watched my son do it. I've watched my daughter do it. People can have shit everywhere, all over the kitchen, and they're in there cooking. I can't. For me, it's not my threshold. My threshold is lower. It's not my preference. So I will first clean the whole kitchen before I start to cook. Again, it's a preference. It's not, okay? So I'll talk more about this in a minute, but what I want to say is that all this boils down to respecting and embracing our partner's differences. And when we do that, it's going to be easier to find common ground. Okay? All right. So changing our mindset is one. Step 2 is to decide if it's a want or a need. Oh, yeah. So now you're changing your mindset. You're changing this language in your head. They're not all wrong. You're not all right, right? We're shifting things. And it doesn't mean you don't like things and have your preferences. You're allowed them, okay? And you're allowed to have your partner support you in some of those. But I will tell you this, it gets in the way. Now, it's time to decide what you really need, not what you really want. We all have things we want and we all have things we need, but they're not the same thing. Needs are things that must be there no matter what. If you're getting in a relationship and you need to have kids, that's I call those deal breakers, right? If you need to have those kids raise a certain religion, deal breaker. If you're somebody who's super close to your parents and you absolutely will be available at their beck and call anytime they call, I think that's a little codependent, but I say that with love. But if that's just how you're raised or something, that's a need, not a want, right? It's something you have to have. Talking to your best friend on a daily basis. Some people need to own a home. Other people don't. Some people are like, I have to. I will not be able to sleep at night if I don't have a home so that I own. So, okay, these are non-negotiables up front, which hopefully you did up front, okay? But that's, to me, normally what people do talk about up front. They do talk about their needs mostly. They do. They talk about how many kids they want, or, what kind of home they want, or where they want to live, or in my experience, most couples do that. The problem is that we want a lot of things, okay? Like for our partner to be more health conscious, to clean their whiskers out of the sink, that's mine, or to put away their makeup, that's Gary's. These are all wonderful things, but they're not a need. And it's not a need. I had a couple recently, they were fighting over the pillows on the bed. Why do we women love our pillows so much? I don't have a lot on the bed, but I have a lot on the couch. My daughter's always complaining. I've got like 20 pillows on the couch. And this couple was arguing because he was always the last one on the bed, so he would have to make the bed. And she, of course, has this amazing, they have this beautiful, they have this big bed and all the pillows, and they're supposed to be in a certain order, and there's a whole thing around these fucking pillows. And they've been fighting about the pillows for years. And he tries, put them all up there, but to him, he doesn't like all the pillows. He thinks it's crazy. At night, they have to go in a certain corner so the dog doesn't get to them. It's like a thing. He just thinks it's ridiculous, but he loves her. And he's like, okay, you want these pillows on the bed? We can have these pillows on the bed. And so, but she complains a lot when he doesn't put them on correctly, her right way. I got to tell you, you got to stop. If this is you and you're listening to me right now, and I love you, I do, but we have to start being real in our lives. Oh my God, if you had a week to live, would you care about the motherfucking pillows? No. You don't marry, on your list of things, when you said, I'm going to get married one day, I'm going to marry this great person, on your list was never, ever mows the lawn well, great with putting pillows on a bed, wipes counters religiously, okay? It was not on your list. Nowhere on there. I guarantee it. If it was, you should call me. We need to see each other individually. I'm not sure what's wrong with you. But anyway, I say with love. Okay. There's probably medication. So what the hell are you so focused on? And I'll tell you why you're focused in just a minute. But but I wanted to say first, those pillows are a preference. It's your preference, not theirs. So if you want the bed a certain way, I would say it's your job to make sure they look the way you want them every day, not your partner's. It's nice if they make the bed. Yeah, that's our job. But maybe putting on the pillows is yours. Like to me, making the bed would be that's what we're talking about. We talk about males and females living, or females and females, and males living together. People living together and dividing kind of household chores. And so I think we have that rule in our house. The last one out of bed makes it. That's just the rule. And I think that's fair. That seems fine. So because thank God we both like a made bed. And, you make it up. But that's the division of labor, so to speak. Not all the pillows on top. Do you know what I'm saying? I'm trying to you know what I mean? Get clear on what we're talking about. Your needs are important. They are. I get it. They're what deserve attention, not your wants. When we spend a lot of time complaining about our wants not being fulfilled, our partners can miss our needs. And so can you. You miss your needs too. Okay? So I'm going to give you this example. So it's likely a need you have to be treated respectfully, right? I can't imagine anybody listening who's not thinking, yeah, that's a need I have, not a want. I don't want to be treated. I need to be treated respectfully. Okay. So, but here's the deal. Your partner leaving the kitchen a mess doesn't mean they don't respect you. When you get upset about the messy kitchen and say that they don't respect you, you're not only missing the real conversation that should be happening, and missing your real needs, but your partner thinks you're blowing things out of proportion and likely gets defensive or angry, right? At the very least, you know how they keep doing it? It's because they don't think it's a big deal. They don't equate it at all with not respecting you. They know they love and respect you. So when you're yelling and screaming, you don't love me, you don't respect me because you didn't wipe the counter, they're looking at you like you're insane. I know you've seen the look. Don't get me wrong. I've gotten into it about the whiskers in the sink. Okay, I too have gotten caught up in the wrong things and thinking again, assigning it meaning, assigning blame to things, assigning a definition that isn't true. Gary so loves and respects me, but whiskers in the sink to him are not a sign of the respect he has. Okay, and frankly, they're really not in the big picture. So you should get to the real issue. And think of it this way. Here's how I always think of it. If you felt fully respected in your relationship, and I mean fully, do you think you would care this much about dishes in the sink or crumbs on a counter? I don't think so. Matter of fact, I'm sure not, because I've worked with literally thousands of couples at this point, and everybody shifts like what they're focusing on. Once we get off the bullshit things and get to the real things, which I'm going to teach you today, then we really start getting somewhere. And we don't care. When I see the whiskers in the sink, I just see it as a way I can support Gary. I'm like, oh, fuck that. It's not supporting Gary. It's supporting me. I care about the whiskers. He does try to rinse them down. He does. He just doesn't do it to my specifications of neatness and cleanliness, right? So it's like, really, when I'm cleaning out the rest of the sink, it's for me, not him. But there are times, putting away the dishes or something, I just think of it like, oh, it's one less thing he has to do. I'm here. I'm available. I can put away the dishes. I don't have to be like, last night I did it, and now today I'm doing it. No, I'm not going to even go there, okay? And I don't really feel the need because, again, I feel a lot of love and respect from him, and I can see all the things he does for me and for him and for the house, for our home and our family. So I don't get into that. But we, again, assign meaning to these things and then decide they're proof of something when they're not. I know it can be hard to hear, but it's really important to get this piece, to get off of that. Think hard about why you don't feel respected. Really, I want to get to the real thing. I want to get to your needs. Okay, so let's get real. And usually when I start talking to people about this, and I'll have a couple, they're with me and they're complaining about the, crumbs on the counter, the sock on the floor or whatever. And I start to really talk to them, I can generally find something like, maybe your partner dismissed your role in raising your kids as not that hard. That happened with a couple I worked with recently. He had sort of said a few things that were very minimizing about her role as a mom and about how hard it was or not. And she missed it. So, it was very covert. It was very kind of in the conversation. It was hard to get. It took me a while to get there with them. And so she was yelling about other things that she could point to, that she could say, here's the thing, that's upsetting me. So, I've had, not that long ago, I had another couple, and she had said some like kind of disparaging things about her partner, another woman, in front of their friends. Okay, so they're with friends, they're all out, they're having fun. And she sort of teased her partner, but was like kind of ranking on her and like laughing about something that her, actually it's her fiance, they're engaged, that her fiance was, like it was what didn't feel good. It felt like she was getting made fun of in front of everybody and they weren't a team. And that to me is a real deal breaker. That's something to really talk about, not hair in the sink. So I need you to think of the real needs that aren't being met and talk about those, not the dishes. Really stop. When you think to yourself, oh, this person doesn't respect me because they did X or Y, stop and think. What is it this? Maybe it is, like in this case with this woman feeling disparaged by her partner in front of other people. Yeah, that was really that thing. But again, they got to talk about it, like ways they don't feel like a team, ways like they're planning this wedding, and there's ways that the one woman is feeling like her partner dismisses a lot of things that she wants, or names them as frivolous or not needing it. She just sort of downgrades things a little to get her way or to get kind of an upper hand feeling. And that was an issue with the couple. And that's what we talked about. That was an amazing conversation. So full, so great. And so you miss it when you tell your partner you feel disrespected and unloved because they left their dishes on the counter. They kind of think you're crazy, and then they get to dismiss it because they know it's not true. They're like, well, I do love and respect them. The dishes had nothing to do with that. I just left them there. I don't care, or whatever. And then, oh, don't you, you'll get called too emotional or too sensitive or something, right? And then you're really going ballistics, and you're screaming at them and threatening divorce. And this is how those little things really get big. But when you sit them down and communicate well about those other things, the real things, the needs, not the wants, then you've got something to discuss and problem solve together. That's the key. And that brings us to our third step and final step, step 3. You have to communicate effectively about those real issues. And I'm not saying you can never talk about, a cup being left, cups being left out or something or whatever, something that's sort of chronic that always happens around your house. But I'm saying you will have very different conversations when you're coming from a different place about them. And you'll feel better. You won't feel like a nag or like you're complaining. You'll feel like you're actually having these rich conversations, and so will your partner. And that's where connection happens. That's where we want to do something for our partner because we feel connected for them. I always say to you, you have to connect to correct, and this is what I'm talking about. You want to connect on a real feeling level, which I'm going to teach you in 1 second. And then you can say, hey, I've got this thing, right? So steps 1 and 2, you've gotten better, right? You got your mindset shifted. You're better now at realizing what you're really upset about. And now you want to have a loving conversation about it. And I have done so much about how to communicate effectively. I have a complete guide to effective communication on the website, and I have a 3-part episode, 3-arc episode about it on the podcast. I just did top 10 tools for, go look up communication and Abby Medcalf. You will find a ton on my website or in general. I have written so friggin' much about it and in great detail and depth, but because I love you and you're right here right now and don't want to go do all that right this second, I want to tell you the most important thing to do, okay, in this 3-step process. If you want your partner to listen, without getting defensive or hurt, I did a episode on that too. You can look that up. How to listen without getting defensive or hurt. Okay. But if you want your partner to listen without getting defensive or hurt, you need to go into the conversation looking to learn something, not prove something. Okay. That is number 1. This means you ask curious, loving questions relentlessly. You're not trying to get your partner to see your side. You're not trying to get your partner to change their mind or to change. You're trying to understand all the facets of the dynamic in this situation to then come up with a plan together because you're a team. And here's a great trick for you. I'd even say and I do this when I'm really like, oh, I'm so right. Ask questions in such a way that you're actually trying to convince yourself to adopt their way of doing things. You're trying to get proof that it's okay to leave crumbs on the counter. You know what I mean? I know. But again, you're not even probably going to be talking about crumbs on the counter right away. That will probably come in like the secondary level of this conversation. But because you want to ask questions that are, again, about the needs, not the wants. That's a good one. You're asking questions about the needs, not the wants. You can get to the wants later when the needs are established. And you can then draw a line from a need to a want. Okay. But like I said, when you're just yelling, like you don't respect me because you don't put away the dishes, that goes nowhere. So, do you want to be correct or effective? I say it all the time. Do you want to be correct or effective? I'm giving you the effective way to do this. So if you're sitting there right now going, but I want to tell them that it's not okay, then be my guest and be in that same shitty conversation. I don't know what to tell you. You're listening right now because you know what you're doing is not effective. You know what you're doing. Changes happen very briefly, and then it goes back to being the way it was, or no change happened at all. I am here to help because I love you, but you got to listen. Got to do it. So if you want more sex with your partner, you're not going to go there and go, I want more sex. We're not having enough sex. Why aren't we having more sex is not the question I'm talking about. That's not a curious question. That's not a loving question. That's not an open question. An open, loving question is, what would you like to see more of in our sex life? What a great conversation will come from that. If you want more sex, or if you want less sex, and even if you want less sex, if you're thinking like, oh, my partner's always pushing me about sex, you might just say to them, what do you want to see more of? Maybe they're looking for more sex because they're not getting what they need in the sex you are having. I've seen that many, many times. So if you can ask, don't be afraid of the topic. What would you like to see more of in our sex life? Tell me everything. What would you like to see less of? What would you like to see more of? And if the person just says, well, I want more sex, say, well, tell me more. What do you want to see more of in our sex life? Okay, more times, but what else? What else? What else is one of my favorite questions? Tell me more about is one of my favorite questions. It's great. And you have to be open and curious while you're listening, not looking to defend, not looking to shoot down what they're saying, not looking to make a counterpoint. If anything, you want to ask more questions to understand better. If you're feeling disrespected, you might ask, hey, what are the ways that you see yourself showing me respect? Like, what are the ways that you see that you show? I know you respect me, because you should know that they respect you on some level. Like, there's other things. So what is it that you do that you think shows respect? Is there anything you do that you feel like is disrespectful to me? Is there anything you do or say, or, have a conversation? If you feel you do need to talk about the cleanliness in your home, learn about it. I want to hear more about what a clean home means to you. What does clean mean in our home to you? And ask a lot of follow-up questions, because you really are going to want to understand what their definition of clean is, what it means to them, how they see things. If your partner doesn't remember to do things that you've agreed, you agreed on Friday that they were going to do X, Y, and Z, and they didn't do it again, instead of yelling about not doing it again, because again, that hasn't been effective. Be correct, not effective. Don't be correct, be effective. You might just say, okay, tell me more about what was happening for you on Friday. I know things got a bit twisted. I really want to hear about your day. How are you tracking things? Like, how, when this thing's happen, when you and I decide X, what takes you from X to action? Like, how do you put all that together? And don't be sitting, oh, I can solve that. Oh, I'll problem solve that. Oh, I'll give them suggestions. Don't do any of that. Just listen. Just listen and ask more questions. Okay, is there another way you've ever tried that? Have you, well, when you have done what I've asked, when you followed through, because you've done that plenty, because they have, how did that get set up differently? What do you think gets in the way from the times you do it and the times you don't? Like, what is that? And really get clear. Get clear on what their definitions of things are. Again, like, what does clean mean to you? You'll be shocked. I think I've shared this before. I don't remember, but I had a couple I worked with a long time ago, and he was a drinker, and she wanted him to stop drinking. She felt like he drank alcoholically. And to make a long story short, he committed to not drinking for a month. And when they were in session next, he said, I said, how's your drinking? He said, I haven't been drinking. And she said, what are you talking about? You drank Monday, you drank Wednesday, you drank Friday, right? And he said, I wasn't drinking. I mean, he was so sure he hadn't been drinking. And I was like, what is so different here? This is so weird. And to him, beer wasn't drinking. He thought she only meant hard alcohol. He was not being passive aggressive. He was not being an asshole. That's really, as he grew up in this hugely alcoholic home where beer wasn't considered drinking. Like, when you were trying to cut back, you just drank beer. So, in his head, that's what it was. So you got to be open, curious, and loving when you ask these questions, and you will have a completely different conversation. You can ask if your partner, if you wants to hear, your thoughts about the topic, but I would really encourage you to first share any aha moments you're having about how they think, showing empathy, understanding first, that's the way to go. Show empathy and understanding first before you do anything else. It's a great way to create bonding and mutual respect. I encourage you to say things like, what I hear you saying is, to get clear that we're communicating on the same level, that our definitions line up. And then you can come together with a plan towards a new goal that maybe neither of you's even thought of yet. So, and you got to remember that road is not going to be perfect. It's not a straight trajectory from where you are to where you want to be. So you have to give some grace, some optimism as you move forward. You want to think, well, we're going to get to that goal, because we have to get to the goal, because I don't want to fight about this anymore. So, let's just keep kind of digging at it in this way, in this loving, open conversation way, and keep sort of pivoting until you find where you want to be. I'm just going to end with this. I want to highly suggest having a weekly couples business meeting. I will link in the show notes. I did a whole episode on this, but you can come download here on the website, abbymedcalf.com/podcast. I will have a couples business meeting checklist ready for you to download, because having regular business meetings is a great way to problem solve as a team. There are so many moving pieces in any family, and it's so easy to seem like we're nagging one another. So having a weekly or even a bi-weekly couples business meeting, it makes you happier, because you're going to have a list of all the things you're going to meet weekly. You have like an agenda. You have a list. I usually tell people to keep like an Excel sheet somewhere on Google Docs or something. And instead of having what seems like a constant stream of nagging, you'll have this one time and place to discuss all those things. From some of it can be just logistical things, light bulbs getting changed, where the kids are going to summer camp. Let's talk about how much we want to budget for vacation. It's a great time to talk about the things. You're going to have your partner's full attention because it's just this half hour or this 45 minutes that you have, or 10 minutes that you have established for this. You can't do 10 minutes in the beginning. It's going to take a little longer in the beginning, but you don't have to worry about forgetting something important because everything is right there on the sheet. There's accountability. And I always have a rule with people that, because you can just write on the sheet, like, okay, your partner said they'd fix the dog door, which has been broken for 2 weeks. You come back the next week, is it done? And you don't ask in between, you don't nag, you don't mention it, nothing. It's their responsibility. You set it in the session, in the little business meeting. And if the dog door isn't complete the following week, you're like, oh, I tell people to have a 2-week thing, that if the item isn't completed within 2 weeks or hasn't been discussed that it will be later than 2 weeks, then you just outsource it. Just outsource it. Don't even say anything in the meeting. Just if your partner says for the second week in a row, oh, I forgot again, that means your plates are too full and this couldn't get done. Go hire someone to bring in, fix the dog door and stop complaining about it. Like, be over it. It is a great thing to do. It'll make it so much easier, and you'll have these planned times to deal with bigger issues that often get, they get missed or rushed. You end up with disappointment and frustration and confusion that you do not need. So a couples business meeting, I cannot recommend it highly enough. Even I have people I work with who are divorced, and it's a great thing to have instead of, that push and pull with your ex, maybe where you're talking all the time and they're texting you all the time, or you're always texting them or something. Some things are obviously, your kid forgot their jacket at their house, but even that, if it's always getting forgotten, I would put it on the agenda to discuss, like, hey, the lunch containers always end up at your house. What can we do about that? Like, how can we buy more lunch containers? Can we make the kids responsible? Can we just wash them and put them right in the backpack? Let's talk about it instead of it being a constant source of tension. Let's figure out how to actually solve it together. And there you have it. Do opposites attract? Yes and no. Is there something you can do about it if your partner feels very, quote unquote, opposite of you in a lot of ways? Yes, there are. There's my 3 steps to figuring it out. I hope that was helpful. Thank you. I can't remember her name who wrote in. Thank you for writing in and asking the question. It was brilliant. As always, anybody who has a question, you can write it into abby@abbymedcalf.com. It's really where I get so many wonderful ideas for the podcast or from you. I want to help you. I'm not going to give advice over email, so don't ask. It's not how it works. It's unethical. I'm not going to do it. However, I am going to respond and say thank you or whatever, or no, that's not something I can really cover. And sometimes I'll point you to resources that are already out there if I know of them, so that you can improve your life. I have to go because I'm getting my implant today. I'm so excited. It's been a year, finally getting the end of the implants, and I have a big hole in my mouth. Maybe God was telling me not to eat as much. Anyway, I love you so much. I'm sending love and patience right now. And have an amazing week.